Welcome, everybody. We've got a great call today. Thank you for joining us for our February webinar. And Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Kylie and Cy. I appreciate you guys putting this all together. And good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Burke. I'm founder and CEO of Verivest Fund Services. Today, we're here for some real-world stories and kind of illustrate some of the traps and things in the private credit world. I know a lot of our client base are fund managers and private credit people in the mortgage pool space. So these guys are going to have some interesting things to chat about. And you guys, if you have questions along the way, please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do the best we can to answer them either during the conversation or at the end. My guests today, we have Randy Newman and Rob Seidenwurm of Total Lender Solutions. It's great to have you guys here. Appreciate you guys coming. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Matt.
Now, why don't you guys give us a little bit of background? I'll share a personal story about Rob. Rob and I go way back into the 90s, actually. But why don't you guys give us a little bit of background on yourself and Total Lender Solution, and then we'll kind of dive into it.
Well, I'll go first, but I'm Rob Seidenwurm. I'm a lawyer. I'm general counsel here at Total Lender Solutions. And as Matt said, I worked with him ways back. I've spent the bulk of my career representing private funds as an attorney, as outside counsel, as inside counsel with Matt, and done everything from the law firm side, handling different lenders, to with employed by the lenders, to now on the other side of it, actually doing the foreclosure work and default services. So that's my specialty.
And I'm Randy Newman. Excuse me. I'm the founder and CEO of Total Lender Solutions. Unlike Rob, I'm a recovering attorney. Been licensed in New York and New Jersey for about 35 years or so. Been in this business for about 41. Been foreclosing on people since I've been in college, actually.
It's a hobby of yours.
Yeah, sounds pretty bad. Came out to California in 2000 and to run away from practicing law because real estate law in New York was not as much fun as it used to be. And then wound up starting Total Lender Solutions in response to one of my students. I was teaching some real estate classes saying, "Hey, do you know how to do foreclosures?" I said, "I'm a real estate lawyer. Of course I know how." And he's like, "My father-in-law's a hard money lender and isn't happy with his trustee. Could you talk to him?" I'm like, "Sure." Like, what's a trustee? Because in New York, all we use are mortgages. So I've done judicial foreclosures, non-judicial foreclosures, learned all about the process here. And we started the company back in June of 2005. So we're in our 21st year now, and just trying to help out as much as we can.
Yeah, so Rob and I actually met back in, I don't know, this Rob had to go back to probably
98.
4, 5, somewhere in the early, maybe even earlier.
Mid-90s. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were way back when I was a hard money lender, and we were doing individual trust deeds one at a time, and then eventually I wanted to start a fund, and so we went to a law firm here in town that was kind of heavy in the private lending space on both drafting loan documents, also handling foreclosure work, and doing pooled investment funds. So that's really where we first got connected. It's going all the way back to the late 90s on the very first fund we ever did. Rob ended up coming to work for us for a while as our general counsel, and then ended up moving down to California and San Diego, and kind of kept in touch a little bit here and there over the years, but kind of known each other for a long time. I know guys from having done both individual trust deeds and also pooled investment funds that a huge part of it for a lot of lenders is, managing the defaults, right? And that's a big thing. I know that's kind of the business that you guys are in. So why don't you touch upon that a little bit and kind of let you start, Randy, wherever you'd like here. But let's start there, and then I'll dive in with some questions. I think I've seen many lenders over a lot of years, and I've seen foreclosures, and like as you alluded to, there's judicial foreclosure, there's non-judicial foreclosure, there's licensing requirements in different states, there's lots of ways to kind of mess up the process, right, where maybe they don't have the right things or they don't do the right things in the right order, and that causes delays of time, so on and so forth. But why don't you give us a little bit of background here on what your take is on some of the issues that lenders face in the foreclosure arena.
Sure. Well, I'll just give a brief, if it's okay, Matt, just talk a little bit about the difference between the judicial and non-judicial to
Sure,
start.
please
So
do.
this way, okay, about half the states through what's called a non-judicial process, and a little more than half the states have on their books a judicial foreclosure process. And the difference is simply the use having to go to court to get relief or not having to go to court as far as the lender's concerned. Where I'm from, New York, on the East Coast, it's predominantly what's called a mortgage state. And the document they use to secure their real estate transactions is a document actually called a mortgage. On the West Coast, pretty much west of the Mississippi, most states conduct what are called non-judicial foreclosures, and those are done outside of court. They use a document called the deed of trust, or in some states, they have what's called a mortgage with a power of sale. So even though everybody calls their real estate loans mortgages, because that's just where
The general term.
it's the generalized term, not everyone actually has a mortgage. People have deed of trust loans, people have mortgage loans. And where you are depends on what you can do. Like here in California, where we are, you can do either judicial or non-judicial foreclosure. The benefit to doing non-judicial foreclosure is typically the speed. We're done in a typical process somewhere between 4 and 6 months from start to finish. Whereas a judicial foreclosure can go anywhere from a year or longer, and it's easy for the borrower to come in to fight it, even when there are no defenses. They will come in because it does put a monkey wrench in there and slows things down. The courts are not designed in the non-judicial states to really handle a volume of judicial foreclosures. So the preference is really to do a non-judicial foreclosure in the states that offer it. With rare exception in California, the only time anyone really goes judicial is because there's either a problem with the paperwork, and Rob and I can get into that in a little bit. The underlying paperwork, the note, the deed of trust, things sometimes don't match up and whatnot. And then the other difference is was it?
What do you say?
I lost my train of
Yeah.
thought.
Well, why would somebody do a judicial foreclosure if they didn't have to? And maybe the answer is they wouldn't.
They
Or that
wouldn't. In California, they wouldn't. And in most states, they wouldn't. The judicial foreclosure is typically frowned upon by the states that allow non-judicial foreclosure because they don't want the courts backed up. So in California, to go non-judicial, our process is actually 4 months, but just getting started and everything usually takes a little ramp up and just a little buffer there, which is why I said 6 months. But you get done, but all the borrower's rights are terminated at the end of the foreclosure in California, the non-judicial foreclosure. If we go judicial foreclosure in California, the borrower's rights are not terminated at the foreclosure sale. The borrower still has rights that can last up to 1 year post foreclosure sale, during which time they have the right to remain in possession of the property. So California absolutely discourages you doing that. The only time you'd really want to is because there's a problem with the paperwork. We have things where the dates don't match up. We have a note dated a year before the deed of trust. And
what are those, just clerical errors, or?
They're clerical errors. It's usually sloppiness, because people take a form, they don't read the form, they don't fully understand the form. So what they'll do is most deeds of trust, the pre-printed forms refers to a note of blank amount, which you fill in the amount, and then it uses a couple words after that says of even date herewith, which means that the note date is the same as the deed of trust date. And so it's referring to a note, and if we can't refer to the correct document, then we can't go forward with foreclosure.
Yeah, well, all that really does is mean pay attention on the front end to make sure that you
Correct.
get things done properly so you don't inadvertently cause yourself major problems on the back end. And that's just a general truism of life, I would say. It's true
Absolutely.
with funds.
It's even when I was practicing law, it was always cheaper to come and ask me questions before you did something rather than have me fix it after you did something.
Right.
Yeah, and
The cleanup's always
correct me,
more.
correct me if I'm wrong, but there's different rules in different states in terms of the pace. Like in Texas, you can generally move much more rapidly than you can in certain other jurisdictions. Is that accurate or
Abs-
not?
Texas for us is the fastest state that we work in.
Fastest gun in the West.
Oh, it is truly the old West there. I mean, from our perspective, it's great because Texas tends to leave people alone. They don't interfere with the processes that are in place. So in Texas, prior to us starting, the lender or servicer sends out a notice of default, essentially, which is just a letter to the borrower letting them know that they're in default and foreclosure is going to begin. They have, I believe, 25 days to respond to that. If they don't respond within the 25 days, we can then set a foreclosure sale with 21 days notice. And it's
Yeah.
done, all foreclosure sales in Texas are done on the first Tuesday of every month. It's the fastest system we have. It's the least expensive system we have because we're not required to publish the notice of sale. We're not required to notify junior lien holders in
Well,
Texas.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say
because there's all kinds of requirements, right? And this may vary from state to state around publishing the sale, allowing a
Correct.
certain number of days to elapse, notifying other lien holders, and other like notice
Correct.
requirements, correct? And
Correct.
that varies from state to state. My understanding, you guys, Total Lender Solutions, now you're set up in how many states too?
We're currently in 7 states. We're in Arizona, California, Missouri, Nevada, Oregon,
Washington,
Washington,
Texas.
and Texas.
And your business is to help private lenders mostly with foreclosure work. Is that a fair summary? And
That is all we do is foreclosure work. We do nothing else. Even though Rob and I both have the legal background and we don't practice law in within TLS. So there's we just act as a trustee. We're licensed appropriately in the different states. But we function solely as a trustee representing the lenders. The benefit of that, one
Yeah.
second, the benefit of that is having the two of us on there. We tend to cut our clients' legal bills down as well because we're not, we'll talk to the clients. We don't charge for that. And we'll say, hey, this is the problem. Go talk to your lawyer. This is the issue you have. We kind of pare it down. So take out a lot of the fact finding for the lawyers and give the client more of a plan on how to approach the litigation if necessary.
do you guys get into, I know like your client base are they private lenders? You guys work with banks as well, or what's?
Yes. We work with everyone from people who are selling their own property and don't make loans and do seller carrybacks. We represent private lenders, hard money lenders, depending on which term people are
Yeah.
using, loan servicers, and going all the way up to the big five banks and even some Wall Street firms we've done some business for.
So what are some sort of practical challenges or traps or common pitfalls that you guys see with, so let's focus especially on the private lending business, because I think most of our client base we're fund administrators and syndication administrators. So we do a lot of work for people who are running funds that invest in these loans. So it's not necessarily that there's a single individual beneficiary of that. Well, the beneficiary of the trust deed is the fund itself, not a specific investor, right? And then the investor is typically an owner of that fund, and then gets the outcome of that particular investment, and then depending on how many investments are in there. But what are some of the challenges or pitfalls you think for these private lenders, or even some, if you probably have some good horror stories, I imagine, that you could share. So yeah, let me talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I also have a legal practice as well, and I represent, it's basically the core of my business is representing private money lenders. But as someone who's gone through that default process with them, there's a lot of confusion as to which way to go when you have a loan in default, and a lot of people don't know what the right way to go is. I mean, and it depends on your situation. It depends on how much equity you have in the property, but One specific thing is, do we want to work something out with the borrower? And, one of the things we do at TLS is if we talk to new lenders is, hey, are you sure you want to start the foreclosure? Is there another way we can go? You can do a forbearance agreement, for example, where instead of saying, we'll give you more time and all this, you're in default. If you do A, B, C, D, and E, you will cure the default, but we're not waiving any kind of default. It's really important that if you're starting to work with the borrower, even before you contact an attorney, that you're not just coming up with a deal over the phone that you think they'll take, and then bringing money in and then not papering it. Because if you don't paper it, you're really holding yourself hostage of well, was there a deal here? Let's just say the loan matured, and then you're like, okay, yeah, just make another interest payment, and we'll deal with it next month, and you've got all these things. Well, depending on how the documents are drafted, it may be that you're waiving a default, or you're having to push out your default because you've implied, hey, I'll keep collecting this monthly payment and not have to take not require a maturity payment, right? So you don't want to keep it vague as to what's going on there. I've had plenty of times where, especially if you have a borrower that ends up being well represented by an attorney, where they say, we had a deal here, you had a deal, and look, you took the loan was due in February, and you took a payment in March and April and May. How was my client thought we could just do this, forever? And if you don't paper it and at least say, people understand that, you can find yourself in a world of hurt as well.
Well, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, but it does mean that they can delay the process significantly by making those kinds of arguments, right? And then you end up having to spend time and money defending it and so forth. I mean, it doesn't relieve them of the obligation to pay, right? And if they stop paying, but to your point, and having been through this with, a fair number of foreclosures over the years, all kinds of crazy shit can happen. I mean,
and it does.
I'll tell you that the story I know best was there was a loan in Washington State, and it just so happens in Washington State, if the loan is for agricultural purposes, that you can't foreclose non-judicially. You can only foreclose judicially. So we had foreclosed on this piece of land that was not agricultural or anything. The deed of trust, everything in the document said not for agricultural purposes. However, the borrower ended up saying, no, I've been cutting timber on this property now. And you never said anything like that. There was never a factor, it was never part of an appraisal or anything like that the timber was worth anything. He took it all the way to the Washington Supreme Court that said, I should have the right to do this. I mean, he eventually lost, not because his theory wasn't wrong, but the facts didn't, but it was 2.5 years of fighting and a lot of legal battle. This was on a $400,000 loan, on basically what was supposed to be a piece of dirt. So,
well, I mean, you and I have some recollection of a few stories of like things that went as far up as you could possibly imagine with crazy people.
Yeah.
So it's
desperate people will do desperate things.
Yeah, it's amazing what can happen. So, from your guys' standpoint, what are some of the things people should be thinking about in advance? I mean, what advice would you give to private lenders going into the deal, early on, that give you the best chance of not having those kinds of things happen down the road?
I'll let you talk about after. Let me just say, again, papering everything that you can paper. If you're having discussions with the borrower, if you're making some kind of modification to what your original loan document said, is key to making the pain worse, or making the pain better, not making the pain worse. And the second thing would be things like assignments, especially if the loan was purchased, or sometimes lenders will purchase in their management company's name, and then their fund will buy the loan. It's really important to have all that paperwork done before we start any of these processes. It just delays things. I do know that during the Great Recession, I was working for a title company and doing a ton of foreclosures for loans that were changing hands several times, and it was a mess. No one bothered to figure it out. So That's one of them from my end. And
Well, and on that point, and hold this thought for a second, Randy, is I know there are a lot of people out there in the lending business that have a combination of, okay, they're funding and holding the loan on the balance sheet inside the fund or with their private individuals, but they're also originating these loans with the intent to sell. And then they'll sell, and sometimes they'll retain a strip, right, of the interest and so forth. And then the assignments, to your point, Rob, I mean, is that a big issue that you guys see a lot? Because like a lot of people are selling, loans up.
We see that a lot, Matt. And a lot of things that happen are one thing that we find a lot of are escrow companies not recording reconveyances on prior loans.
Yeah.
So you go in, you make the loan, you assume you're in first position, you've got a title policy that says you're in first position. Then when we order our title search, what we need to do the foreclosure, it comes up and showing you're in second or third position. And everybody always goes off the deep end there, and rightfully so, wanting them, sending us copies of the title policy. We go to the title company, can you remove this from our report? Typically they will, because the report doesn't really mean anything, because it's really just used for us to process the foreclosure. So it doesn't cost them anything to do that. But
Yeah.
those reconveyances have to be recorded properly. And then, if the property reverts at the conclusion of the foreclosure, meaning that it doesn't sell to a third party, the foreclosing lender gets the property. Now that foreclosing lender has to go and chase down the assignments or the
Yeah.
satisfactions rather to recons to get rid of them.
right, when you sell the property,
when you go to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, two quick anecdotes on that one. One, just like a month ago, I spent some time down in the desert. I just got back to Oregon here recently, but a loan that we made probably like 15 years ago hadn't been reconveyed, and they had to send a mobile notary to the place I was staying at so I could sign some reconveyance documents on a loan that paid off like 12 years ago.
Right.
So that stuff does happen. And another one, we did a loan one time where you might have been here, Rob, at that time, but we did a loan where we got a title report that showed the property free and clear, and made the loan to the guy, and then discovered, and he never made a single payment. And then we discovered very quickly thereafter that he had a loan out with another lender that just wasn't on the title report, and the guy knew it, and he went out and borrowed a few $100,000 on a free and clear property, and basically it was a cash out refi, and he was over encumbered, and he just walked and never paid either of us, and then we had to battle it out with the title company.
Wow.
Which is never fun. I mean, you'll usually get them to, you need to get good counsel to be at that point to deal with the title company. I may or may not be that person, I don't know, but that who can then tell the title company, hey, we have this that says there's a first. Your title policy says we're in first. Resolve this.
Yeah.
Either buy our loan or fix it.
We ended up getting paid by the title company on that deal, but it took a year to battle it out, and a lot of legal costs and so forth. I was going to ask you guys, isn't there a new law down in California that just passed recently that has that pertains to seconds, that now you can't you can't foreclose, or there's notice periods, or I can't remember what it is, but I'm sure you guys are familiar with it.
Yeah, this is one that holds particular animus for me, Matt, because I'm involved in the Trustees Association, which is the National Association of people who do what we do, the foreclosures. And we were negotiating that bill. Actually, our lobbyist was negotiating that bill. And then the governor needed a vote for the budget passage. And so the trade-off was he was going to sign off on this piece of garbage bill. They added it on to the budget bill in the middle of the night. This was on a Friday night. It got passed on Monday, and Monday night it was effective. This new law came into effect with immediacy, which is unusual. And what it does is it now defines certain actions as being illegal, even though they're authorized by both federal and state law, such as you have to, if you give a borrower 1099-C, which is a charge-off, a cancellation of debt form that triggers a tax consequence, there's no reason why you can't foreclose on that property afterwards. The law specifically allows you to do that, except if you're a California second. Now on a junior loan in California, you can't foreclose on that loan because you've done that. It also says if you've had no contact with the borrower for 3 years, at any time during the loan, if you've ever missed any notice that was supposed to go out to the borrower. And so if you've purchased a junior loan, so a loan in second or less position, and you want to foreclose, you bought the loan, servicing was transferred. Your current servicer has to attest under penalty of perjury that the prior servicer didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And now the lender has to sign a declaration that there had been no violations of the law. And it doesn't matter whether before the enactment of the law or after the enactment of the law. It's just a total piece of garbage. It conflicts with so many different things. And it's another example of over legislating and having solutions in search of problems that don't exist. The idea behind it is they were coming in to wipe out all what we call the zombie junior loans from the Great Recession. So people who've had loans on their property for 20 years at this point, almost 20 years at this point, that haven't been paid, they didn't want the lender to be able to collect on it if there's been no contact. So it affects every lender, everybody in California. There are terms in there that are defined without definition. The industry, both the Private Lenders Association in California, the California Mortgage Association, the United Trustees Association. I think we're also in line with the MBA. We've started a lawsuit to get on the unconstitutionality of the law, excuse me. And so where that stands right now, I don't know. I know they'll be going for a TRO shortly, but it has definitely put a damper on junior lien foreclosures. We're still doing them. We've got no issue with doing them. It's just we've got to jump through some more hoops beforehand that don't always make sense.
It's always hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have figured out how to become good hoop jumpers.
I'm very agile.
Yeah. You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but yeah.
So as we get toward the bottom of the hour here and kind of wrap up, guys, any other thoughts around, what would you say you'd be any disclosure documents or any tips for people out there to really try to button themselves up? I know a lot of it's just preparation in advance, right? I mean, make sure you got a good set of legal documents on the front end. Make sure you document yourself, along the way. Like there's licensing issues as well, right? In different states. I mean, to be able to lend it. You guys don't get involved in any of that, do you? On the licensing side?
Well, we don't as far as getting licensing at all, but the key to remember also is make sure that, especially if you're using a real estate broker, that broker is licensed in the jurisdiction that the loan is being made in. Rob was talking about that lawsuit from before. We were sued in a foreclosure I started in 2007. The lawsuit just got dismissed last year. The borrowers took the money as administrator of an estate. So it wasn't a consumer loan. It was done as a business purpose loan, never made one dime in payment. The broker that arranged the loan was licensed in Nevada, which is where all the lenders were, but not licensed in California. And the California usury limits were exceeded. In California, you can't charge more than 10% APR or 5 points over the, what do you call it?
Fed funds.
The Fed funds rate when the loan is made. So it can't exceed that amount. And this loan exceeded that amount. So the borrowers came in, they started a lawsuit. It was in 2007 was the first lawsuit. And it went in, it got settled. It finally just got settled last year. And the lenders had to pay the borrowers to get out of it because it was such a nightmare case.
Just to be clear real quick, you can do those loans in California if they're brokered loans or you have what's called a CFL license.
Right.
But if you didn't have that broker license, if you were relying on the broker exemption and the broker wasn't a California broker, then then the lender's committed usury.
Right, because California, you can charge whatever interest you want as long as you fall into one of the permitted categories.
Yeah. I think the point that I would take away from all of that is there's just a lot of different moving parts, laws, things that varies by state, and you got to be very conscious of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say, Matt, just to be aware of is when there's a default, and if you're not familiar with the default process, we're here as a resource. So you can just call, pick up the phone, even if you're foreclosing with someone else, you need a second opinion on something. We're happy to take a look, tell you what we can think, what we know, what we can do, what's going on. It's just easier to do it that way because if you understand where it could eventually go, you can chart your course better to get there.
Yeah, so to that end, I think I don't know if we don't have the ability to get this stuff up on the screen. Some technical challenges today, but how do people get a hold of you guys if they're interested in chatting with you? Can you guys give us a website, email address? What would be best?
Our website is totallendersolutions.com. And our email address is info at tlsemails.com.
So that'll go to all of us. And yours is also Randy at tlsemails.com.
Or Rob.
Or Rob at tlsemails.com. Any of those will get to us. And the phone number for the companies on the website, anyone can call anytime. We'll talk to them.
Yeah, I think Kylie, I don't think we have, so maybe we do. If we have questions, no, you got it in there. So we got the information in there. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys coming on today. Super interesting. I know it's especially early on in a lender's lifetime, you don't really appreciate all of the sort of nightmare stuff that can happen on these things until you've kind of gone through it and lived through it. I know you guys have lived through it, in a big way for many years, so you appreciate it deeply. I've lived through it as a lender for many years. I don't anymore, but I've got plenty of battle scars from the days of having to deal with foreclosures, and they're not fun. So yeah, highly encourage anybody in the lending business to make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and reach out to these guys if you'd like. So thanks, guys, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Mac. Thanks so much.
Yep. All right, guys, join us next month. Can't recall exactly who we've got on store, but it's going to be another fascinating discussion on par with this one, I'm sure. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys next month.
Oh,
thanks,
we're
guys.
not going to give them a quiz to see if they know which one of us is which.
Yeah.